fell asleep during his own film. Anybody else here fall asleep?
I've only seen it 600 fucking times. I know how it ends.
You made it.
Yeah, it's true.
Let's talk a bit about the ending. I mean, I guess the way this is going to work is I'm going to sort of get the ball rolling, and then these people have probably got about 200 questions to ask you, so it could be long. But let's talk a bit about the end there, where you're playing with Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
So when he turns up, does he sort of like to rock out a bit more with you? Is that what he does? Because it's not his natural thing, is it, at the moment?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it was funny because we had filmed a few of the performances, and, you know, we had this really strict sort of rule that had you made a record at Sound City, then you could be on the soundtrack, or you could be in the movies. And Paul never recorded at Sound City.
No, of course not.
There was a rumor that they rehearsed for their Hollywood Bowl show at the old Vox Factory.
Right,
It used to be the Vox Factory. But we never confirmed that. So, but I just thought, wow, it just makes such perfect sense that if I'm trying to tell this story from a personal perspective, that he's a huge part of my life and my story. And this story, everybody that I asked, like, I had about 6 or 7 questions that I would ask each person, like standard questions. What was your first impression of Sound City? And everyone would always say, it was a fucking shithole, it was a dump. And then I asked everyone what inspired them to become a musician, and 9 out of 10 people said the Beatles. Like, Tom Petty saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan's show, and John Fogerty bought a Beatles record when he was young, and so the Beatles are just such a huge part, Beatles and Elvis, they're such a huge part of everybody's life. So, so to me, it just seemed like in the ending there where I say how beautiful of a full circle moment it was huge because also, Kurt and Chris were both Beatles fanatics too. So, and we used to mention that, like we would talk about that in interviews. You know, people thought we were just in like Husker Du and Black Flag and the Pixies and stuff, but really the foundation of what we all did was the Beatles. So it just kind of made sense that I asked him. I knew he was coming into town, and I said, hey, if you're up for it, maybe you'd come over for a jam. And I didn't really want to impose and say, hey, let's write a song and put it on a record. I just thought, like, well, I wouldn't. Like, I have that with some people, what I'll say to them, like when I invite people over to jam, I'd say, let's do whatever you want to do. If you want to do something that you've written, let's do that. If you need an idea, I have plenty. Let's throw it in the pot and see what happens. But with Paul, it was really just like, he said, let's just see what happens. So he comes over and he brought the bass, and he brought that guitar, then he brought that fucking sig fiddle thing with him too. Yeah. And which, it was so awesome because he decided, well, I think I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna play this. And to me that was so much more adventurous than just saying, hey, let's bust out an old rock and roll cover, or hey, I'm gonna play my bass. He was like, fuck it, let's get weird, I wanna play this thing. And that was it. And
so he does like to rock out.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, like when the few times that I've jammed with him, when warming up to do whatever we're supposed to do, we just jam. You know? Right. Like when I played with him at the Grammys, they had a camera problem, and we sat up there on stage for like half an hour just fucking around and like created a song. People were dancing, and we were playing this thing, like this improvisational thing right off the top of it. So, but it makes perfect sense because if you think about it, a lot of, like his generation of musicians, if you jam with, John Paul Jones or Roger Waters or a lot of those guys, they're pioneers. They don't just want to do, those guys get a lot weirder than people from my generation. Which is hard to understand, like, it's hard to believe that someone who's 68 or 70 years old can be more musically outgoing or groundbreaking than like some dude that's in like a modern band now and has a funny fucking haircut. But it's true. Like those people, they were pioneers. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. So that's what I thought was so cool. And I mean, that was a 3-hour session that we cut down into 8 minutes. But it was the perfect day, you know. It was like, come in, jam, turn it kind of into a song, rock it out, and then leave. And he was so into it. I was so excited because then a few days later I saw him at a party, And he was carrying the CD around with him in his pocket, like, check it out, I got the CD. And for me, personally, I mean, I used to do that with my Beatles records, like, I got a fucking Beatles record, you know? And now he's got the CD with us on it. It was just like, wow, it was amazing.
Did you let Chris use the bass?
Shit, no, nobody touched that bass. I was scared to fucking look at it. But no, Chris used his big bass. Yeah.
So when it comes down to the sort of roots of the film, you explained it at the start, really, that it was kind of going to be a short film, done for YouTube, all that kind of stuff. At what point did you realise, I mean, it says, story, Dave Grohl, so you wrote this?
You know, it's funny, I did, and on my, the other day I was cleaning out my garage, and I found my journal from when I was coming up with the idea, and when I came up with the idea, and actually my mother had a lot to do with it too.
Right.
When I bought the book, it's funny, it was true. My mother was a public school teacher for 35 years, and she taught creative writing, and she's an English teacher and public speaking coach and all that stuff. So when I told her that I was going to make a movie about the studio and about the board, and then I was going to invite everyone back to make a record, she said, okay, well, you know you don't start the movie by saying you bought the board, right? You tell the story of the studio, and then they close the studio, and then you rescue the board, and then invite everyone back. And that was my mom. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So, and then I wrote this outline of the entire story. Because it's chronological, it all sort of lined up perfectly and made perfect sense. Like the discussion, the history of the studio, the discussion of technology, because that parallels chronologically the history of the studio. And the ebbs and the flow, like the studio became really popular in the 70s, and then towards the end of the 80s, it wasn't so much anymore because they never upgraded their shit and everybody else was using digital stuff. And then Nirvana comes, and their business blew up again because everyone wanted to go back to analog, and then ultimately 2 years ago they closed because they couldn't really survive. So the outline made perfect sense, and when you think of all of those albums in chronological order and all of these people telling the story, it's, you know, it all comes down to when the studio closes. And then to the part 3, we sort of looked at it as in 3 acts. The first act is the history, second act is technology, third act is performance. And in the performances, what we were trying to do is we were trying to demonstrate all of those things that we had talked about earlier in the film. So the idea of like collaboration or feel and all of that shit that you could talk about until you're blue in the face, but then when you actually see it happening, you don't have to explain anything. You know, to have Paul come in the room and come up with a song with me and Chris and Pat in a couple hours, like, that sort of says it all. Or to watch Jim Keltner just do a shaker track. Like, you don't need to define feel, you just need to watch him do that. So, it was pretty fucking easy. The whole entire thing, it really was. And it went, I mean, it went pretty quickly from being a really small idea to an entire movie. Because at first I thought, oh, I'll talk to Butch and Novoselic, and we'll just talk. And so we just talked. And then, meanwhile, I'm emailing fucking Rick Springfield and, you know, Barry Manilow and people like that, and they're all calling back.
We'll come on to that.
Yeah. So, but they're all saying like, yeah, sure, I'll be in your movie. So then now I've got 40 fucking people I have to interview, and that's when I realized, okay, this isn't really a short film. So,
yeah, fairly lengthy film, in fact.
It's a very long short film.
And you have to direct Neil Young's knees as well, which is, you know, no mean feat, to be honest. As well.
You know, the coolest thing about Neil Young is he's fucking Neil Young, man. When he shows up for the interview, it was like sandals, and it was in Hawaii. We had to fly, everybody else just came to our studio, and we found another corner to shoot them in, you know. But Neil, he was the first person to say he'd do it, and he was the last fucking one we tracked down. It took us a year. And we had to fly down to Hawaii. We had to fly to Hawaii.
But Barry was very keen, apparently.
For a
man who only made one record at that studio.
Yeah. Anything musical, Barry Manilow is totally there. He's there. Like, if he donates instruments to schools, he'll play a fucking 3-hour set, and you know every single song that he plays. He's a badass.
You know every single.
You'd be surprised. I remember when there was this every year they have this party before the Grammys in America. It's called the Clive Davis Party. And it's sort of like the office party for all of the people on our label. But then crazy guests will show up. Like, there's Laverne and Shirley, and then there's fucking Michael Jackson, and then there's the guy from the fucking... And one year, Barry Manilow played. And, like, you know, the rockers, like Pearl Jam were over there at a table, and we're over here. And Barry Manilow started, I swear to God, by the end of his set, we were all... like, you just know every one of his songs. He's a great dude.
That's it. Disappointing to see that he isn't actually, you know, he doesn't turn up at the studio and rock out.
Well, here, I'll tell you, this is going to make it even harder to...
The stomach.
Yeah, the most disappointing thing of the whole entire Sound City film was I was this fucking close to getting Barry Manilow to record a song with Weezer. It was so fucking close. I had it. I thought it was going to happen, and it would have been huge, dude. It would have been fucking huge.
For all the wrong reasons.
No, it would have been... Well, you know, the funny thing is that Barry Manilow also writes commercial jingles. He's famous for them. He wrote, like, the Coca-Cola theme, and the fucking McDonald's theme, and the fucking Band-Aid's theme, like, all of it. He wrote all of those little jingles. So he wrote the State Farm insurance theme. You've probably never heard it. It's everybody in America knows it. And so Weezer covered the State Farm insurance thing. So when I had fucking Rivers and the Weezer guys come over to interview them, Rivers is like, who else is going to be in the movie? Well, blah, 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 Barry Manilow. And he's like, Barry Manilow? I was like, yeah, do you know him? And then, and then when I talked to, and then he said, oh, Barry Manilow. And then when I met Barry Manilow, he's like, I love Weezer. Weezer were great. And so then I couldn't remember it.
That's the Muppet version of Barry.
It's kind of like a Muppet.
A wonderful man.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a Muppet.
He's amazing.
Yeah. So were there any collaborations, with the exception of Barry, of course, that really didn't come off? I mean, obviously you're among friends here, you can tell us.
Well, I mean, no, we got what we got. You know, there were some other people that we started to jam with and we didn't have time to finish. We jammed a little bit with the Rat guys, but that was only one night in the studio and it didn't pan out into a whole song. And, but pretty much everything we set out to do, we did. And one of the things we're really proud of is that we did all of that and a record in like under 16 months or something. And I look at filmmakers or people I know who make movies, and they just get like stuck in this fucking slog of like year after year trying to make these things happen. And fortunately, because everyone was so passionate about what we were doing, I mean, it's a pretty simple project, really, like to tell the story of this place that we're all really familiar with. But we did it really quickly. We had a great team. Paul Crowder, the editor, was fucking awesome, man. He's from here, and he's probably best known for Dogtown the Z-Boys and Riding Giants, two really great documentaries. But he's also an audio engineer. So he worked at Trident Studios.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so he knows his way around a studio. Like, he could engineer a session. So if I had to do a section of the film about, like, drum sounds, I'd just say, hey, Paul, I need to cut together a drum sound thing. And he'd go, okay. And he'd do it real easy. It was easy.
I suppose when it comes down to sort of, you know, the idea of directing, how did you approach that? Because it isn't something that you've done a million times. I mean, you've made 1,000,001 videos and you've seen people do things, but this is kind of, you know, it's gone from being what some people would say, oh, okay, you're having a bit of a laugh initially, to suddenly it's a proper film. So
well, you know, I honestly think that, I mean, I don't know, because I don't know what a director's supposed to do, really, other than assemble a team and make sure everybody's on the same page and visualize the idea that you have in your head and make sure that it feels right and it looks right and it sounds right and everything seems right, like, just to try to actualize the vision in my head, you know? Fucking anybody could do that, you know?
Well,
see, I honestly believe, I didn't take lessons to play the drums. I didn't take lessons to play guitar, but I was passionate about learning these things. I'm a high school dropout. I never finished high school. So to me, the idea, to what my mother always told me, was that, you know, school isn't supposed to teach you like specific things that you need, that information that you have to retain for the rest of your life. Because I guarantee you, 100% of the people in here forgot half the fucking shit they were like struggling over in high school and how it applies to their life, you know. The idea of school is to teach you how to learn and how to continue to learn. so that you get those skills on how to learn something, and then you continue to use those skills later in life. And so if you're passionate about doing something, and you're driven, and you're focused on it, then I think you can do fucking anything you want to do. So I'm lucky because I have these wonderful people that I work with, and these amazing resources and stuff like that to do something like this. But I think that anybody could do this. Like, I think that, anybody could do what I've done as long as they're passionate about it and driven and focused. They can absolutely do it. Especially now with technology, where it's available to everybody. You can make a fucking movie on your iPhone, and you can cut it in your iMovie and put it on your iPad or what the fuck you're on now. It's true. It's one of the funny things about the conversation, the technology in the movie, is we talk about how it levels the playing field. It couldn't be more true in my case.
Yeah, but equally, there is a sense within the film. There's a sense that we're seeing the passing of a very particular period in history, not just Sound City. It's the idea of, those big studios were there. They were the places where people congregated. Whether it's Abbey Road, which thankfully is still here, or whether it's Sound City. And there is this sense within that this is a moment that we won't really see again. So technology has, I think Josh makes the point really well,
Yeah, it's true. It's a double-edged sword. It's amazing that now these tools are available to everybody. Like, anyone can make an album in their house, and with the click of a button you can distribute it to the rest of the world. Like, when we were kids making crappy hardcore 7 inches and trying to get the local record store to fucking sell them, that would have been a dream come true, It's a lot easier now to make that happen. But like Trent says, does that mean there's a lot more great music out there now? Not really. Because it has nothing to do with technology. Like, any of this has not... The reason why the movie works is because it has a heart and a soul. The reason why a song works is because it has a heart and a soul. It doesn't matter, it really doesn't matter what tools you use to make that happen. I think a lot of people look at the movie like it has an anti-digital message to it, which I don't think it does. I think what we're trying to inspire people is not... you don't need a fucking board that big and a 2-inch tape to make a great record. You can make a great record on your laptop. It just has to have that human element. There has to have a heart and a soul to it. You can't rely on these things to do it for you. And that's kind of the message of the film, I'm not Amish, I use a computer and things too. I use Pro Tools all the time. I download shit with Pro Tools. I did, of course, why not? Fuck, I know.
After that, does Neil Young know about this?
Well, he uses it too. And so does Petty, like everybody does. Do we prefer to get our hands dirty and fucking wind a spool of tape and put it on a machine and do it old school? Well, yeah. It's like having a barbecue in your backyard. But at the same time, it's like the most important thing to me personally isn't really what tools you use. It's that it comes from a place that is you. That when you're singing, it sounds like you, and when you're performing, it's human.
You obviously, when you went back to Sound City itself, it must have been, a fairly emotional thing for you as well, just to stand back in that room. And obviously looking at all the Nirvana stuff, it feels, to me personally, like a lifetime ago, to be honest with you. How did you approach that? Because it would have been easy for it to be hokey, or for you to just kind of skate over it. But there's detail.
Well, it's funny, because one of the things that, when we first started the project, I said, look, like at the first few interviews, you'll see that I'm in the shot with Butch and Chris, and then I'm in the shot with Mick Fleetwood. The first few interviews, I was in those shots. I kind of told everybody, like, you guys, this movie's not about me. The movie's about Sound City. And so I try to pull myself out of as much of it as I could. The Nirvana section's a big part of it, and the performances at the end are a big part, but I really didn't want it to turn into this big fucking me fest where it's just me all the time. I'm in every shot, and I'm talking to every person, and I'm the guy in Nirvana, and we made a fucking record there, But the personal journey was sort of a big part of it. So I can't remember what your question was.
Well, I was going to get to the end of the question, and then you really got
Oh, sorry.
But I suppose the real question that I have to ask you about, looking back at that time in particular as well, though, for you, what did you learn from that time, and what did you take with you?
I mean, they're huge life lessons. All of it. You know, I was a kid. I really was just a stupid fucking kid. And now I'm a stupid old man. But no, I mean, you know, just as anyone learns everything they know every day of their life, it's sort of the same thing. I mean, musically, I've learned plenty of things, and personally, I've learned tons of things, you know, a lot.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we throw this open to the floor and ask them to ask you exactly
Real questions
you
you
have
have.
learned. Where are the people?
The first hand up right over there. Yes, dear.
Out of all the songs that was done at Sound City, with the exception of Nirvana, which one would you have wished that you had actually been involved with in the past with it?
You know, that's impossible to answer. So many records were made there. It's fucking crazy. When I was buying the board, when we were pulling the board out of Sound City, I asked Tom Skeeter, the owner, to give me a list of all the records that were made there, and he laughed in my face. He just kind of laughed and said, "That's impossible, man. That's thousands of records." So he gave me the short list. But there's so many. I mean, you know, I love Neil Young so much, and I love Stevie Nicks, and the song "Landslide" was recorded on that board, and Tom Petty's a fucking genius, and so many great records were made there that that's a hard one to answer. I wouldn't even know. It's a lot. Yes, Mr. Guy in the hat and the glasses.
I've seen this movie 4 times.
Yes.
And I stayed for all 4. And the thing that I took out of it was, this could be over in a minute. The tour could be canceled, and we may not see our friends again. That hit me every time, and I think that goes directly to you.
Well, you know, Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick. Hey, look, it's Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick! That is the truth.
There's no end to his famous friends, is there?
No.
He carries them with him.
They just think, yeah.
Paul McCartney, come on down.
We're like, yeah. In the intro of the film, we had a couple different ways that we narrated the beginning of the film. At first, it was like, in 1991, I jumped in a van with my friends, but that seemed like it was too once upon a time. So I just got a microphone and I recorded this thing where I was saying that, and that sort of became the intro. We were just kids, we had nothing to lose in order to call home, but we had these songs and we had these dreams, so we threw them in the back of a van and started driving. And what I found after watching the movie a couple times is that can apply to every single one of us, like Cheap Trick and Fleetwood Mac and Tom Petty and Neil Young. Like, we all kind of come from the same place as musicians. Like, we were just kids, and most of us bought our crappy instruments from yard sales and started a band, and then became the biggest band in the world. Like, that's how it happens. It's true.
Most of us didn't.
Well, but you could. That's the thing. The idea is that that's not impossible for anyone. If you're inspired to do that, then that's really all it takes. You don't have to be on a song contest on TV and get told, "Nope, you're not a good singer," by some asshole who has no idea what he's fucking talking about. Or, you don't. There's a real way of doing it. And I think that that narration in the beginning can apply to all of us. Like, honestly, what the fuck else were we gonna do? We were so in love with music that we would give up the rest of our life to do it. And I think it's something that we can all relate to. That little narration at the beginning.
Right, let's ask this young gentleman down here, where are the mic?
Young gentleman.
Hi.
You know what? You don't need the fucking mic. It'll take too long. I'll repeat this question. Don't worry about it. Take a break.
You spoke about the importance of the human element is
Yeah.
working well with musicians, and I was just wondering what it feels like to work with Taylor Hawkins, because you trust him so much,
Oh, yeah.
that you know so well.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering what it's like to work with such
He's talking about the human element and what it's like to work with Taylor Hawkins. Taylor Hawkins is kind of inhuman, to be honest. Like, that guy has more energy than anyone else I've ever met in my entire life, and it's great because he and I are really super close friends, like brothers, right? So we could finish each other's sentences, and we do that musically, like every night. So it's one of the great things about you know, in the movie where we're talking about that it's a conversation between people as musicians and collaborating and what it's like to get people in a room, Taylor and I are a really good example of how that can work. If you know someone personally, then your musical relation, like if you actually like each other as people, then your musical relationship really can benefit from that, you know? Because when we're on stage going bananas with each other, you know, there's other guys in the band too, but when the two of us are like, we're sort of locked into each other, it's almost like we're telling each other jokes, but we're doing it musically, and we're trying to make each other smile. Like, I'll do some stupid fucking guitar thing, and he'll follow it with the drums until it's just like, and you know, you get to see it either work or not work, but it's awesome. It's one of the great things about playing with someone that you really enjoy playing with. Like when I play with Josh Homme, Josh and I are kind of the same way, you know. We're not as close as me and Taylor, but we're really good friends, and when we play with each other, there's something about when he plays guitar and I play drums that it just fucking always sounds good. It just always does. And we don't need to talk about it. We just play, and it works out. It's really fun. Let's go up to there. Guy with hey, I recognize your face. You've only been to 100 fucking shows, dude.
37, I think.
Whatever.
Good to see you. Welcome to London.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just wondering, obviously you can see how affectionate you are of Sound City Studios and of course all the other guys, all the other musicians that recorded there.
Yeah.
He's filming you now. I'm just kind of curious, out of all of the people that you spoke to and your own experiences there, what was the grossest thing you ever heard or experienced at Sound Studios?
The grossest thing?
Yeah. Some real dirt.
Oh, God.
What he means is, did you piss in the corner?
I have never pissed in the corner. I've done some fucked up shit at Sound City. We all kind of did. I mean, you know, it was one of those places that you didn't feel like you had to bathe, or you know, it was like it really was like a fucking clubhouse, you know. So there were nights where you just abandoned the session and just drink until 4 a.m. or you know, in the 70s. First of all, when we brought it to our studio, my good buddy Lou, who's the house engineer at Studio 606, he spent like a good 10 days with a fucking toothbrush getting the cocaine and you know, filth and fried chicken out of it, and so it had a lot of history inside. It was a pretty. One thing that we didn't put in the film that I think I found out later is Sound City had a couch that they fucking rented for 10 years. They rented a couch.
I can't really conceive an age when couches were rented. It's amazing. TVs maybe, but
Couches, yeah. And he didn't want to sit on it either. They could have taken it back. It would have been fine. You right there in the middle. Yes.
Yeah, because of the great drum sound at Sound City,
Yeah.
did you think about buying the whole place?
No, not really. I mean, it's funny, you know, when they do those aerial shots of it, that whole complex is Sound City. Like, it's kind of a big piece of land, or property. It's, you know, there's Sound City, and then right next to it, there's the old LA Tonight Studios, or Keith Olsen's place, whatever that's called. And then, like, next to that, like, Tito Jackson had that for a while. And then there's a place, then they have their, like, storage space, and then another rehearsal studio. It's like a bunch of different places. So, and it's in the fucking worst part of it's in a terrible part of the valley. So, hell no.
Also, yeah, can I get a CD?
What's that?
Can I get a CD?
Yeah.
I'll buy it, yeah?
I'll get it from you. How about that when we're done? Yeah, right here.
You've obviously spent a long time in the studio. Just
Mhm.
wondering, has there been any moments where there's been a lot of tension between you and your close bandmates like Taylor? Has there ever been?
Tension in the studio? He's asking if there's ever been tension in the studio. Yeah. You know, we're lucky because, I think there's a lot of bands that believe that tension really breeds or produces results. And I think that's fucking bullshit. Because if there's tension in the studio, you know what I want to do? Leave. I look at music like, hey, we're lucky to be alive. We're lucky to be in this band. We're lucky to have someone pay for the fucking day in the studio. Let's hit record and do cool shit. Let's not fight over petty bullshit. Like, I've seen people do it, and I've seen people do it, and it's like, it's a waste of fucking time. But of course we've done it too, you know. Not a lot, not as much as most bands. We're lucky, I think. Yeah, in the red, the guy standing up.
How long exactly did it take to dismantle the sound desk and then rebuild it again?
4 hours. Pretty much. To get the board out of that room, it was like, did you see, it was all that time-lapse shit. That was like an afternoon.
But how putting it back together, where do you even start with that?
Well, first of all, don't ask me. but it's not as, you know, it's basically a frame, and all those modules just pop out. So as you can see them popping them out and stacking them up, you pop them out, you stack them up, and you know, pack them nice in a box. And then you get all the cabling out. And that was the most terrifying thing. Is the crazy thing about that board too is that it never moved in 40 years. So there's a lot of Neves around the world, but they kind of bounce around, you know. Like the Neve that fucking was used on Dark Side of the Moon is now at some other studio. Another thing that did that. They move. They're portable. But this one had never moved, and it's one of the few in the world that had never moved from installation until the day we moved. It was 40 fucking years. So it was a little scary, you know. It was like pulling up the Titanic or something. And it was, I mean, it really, I think it even made a sound like, you know. So it was a big deal, but we're pros. Yes, right there in the orange and white shirt.
Wait, do you plan on recording that Screw Fighters album on the soundboard?
I hope so. I mean, one of the reasons why they gave the board to me, a lot of people wanted to buy the board. I mean, the sad thing is that there were a lot of people that wanted to buy it and chop it up and sell each of those individual EQs or mods. They wanted to sell those because each one of them is worth a lot of money, and nobody wants a big board anymore. So they had all these offers to buy it, but they were getting these offers from these parts dealers. And then I came in and said, hey man, I'll buy it. And they knew that I would use it. So, and I get calls all the, I mean, the scary thing is I just made the biggest fucking infomercial for my studio ever. So if I can get into my studio, then yes, of course we'll use it. Yeah, I hope so.
What is the hourly rate at 606?
It depends on who you know.
Oh, really?
Yes, you right there in the middle.
Oh, hey. I used to work in a recording studio.
All right. What happened? Did it fucking close? It didn't. Sorry. It's not funny, guys. It's an emotional subject.
No, basically, I saw a lot of bands come in and write while they were there. They came in with like no real ideas and would write music
Right.
in there, and then you'd have people that knew exactly what they wanted their albums to sound like. How do you work?
Both ways. I mean, it just depends. You know, sometimes it's nice to go in and know exactly what you're going to do when you get in there, because then you don't waste a bunch of time doing nothing. Or it's fun to go in and not have any idea, like the day that we went in with Paul. That was kind of awesome. We didn't have any idea what we were going to do. You kind of have to be with the right group of people, I think, in order to get out of there before dinner, you know. You don't want to spend the rest of your life in the studio. Bands do that. And people get sad. Yes, you in the shirt up there.
Can I sing for you?
Nope, you in the shirt. I was actually pointing to that guy right there. Maybe later. Let me have a few drinks first.
You say you've collaborated with some of the most influential musicians of all time, and I just wondered if there's anyone alive or dead that you'd love to work with?
Yeah.
Little Richard or someone like that?
There's people that I don't even know who they are and I haven't met that I'd love to work with, you know? There's tons, you know. It's really fun to jam with people that you've grown up listening to. It really, you know, they're all huge full circle moments. It's awesome. But then it's also cool to jam with people that you've never met that totally blow you away. It's really fun when you meet someone and you don't know who they are and then you start jamming with them and it's just fucking awesome, you know? I mean, I'll kind of jam with anybody as long as they know what they're doing.
Right, we unfortunately sort of almost out of time, so we've got one more question, Dave. So you pick someone that,
God, that's a good one.
pick someone that's good, and don't worry about disappointing the other 54 hands.
I'm gonna go with you in the front row right there.
Have you ever thought about like doing that kind of documentary on the Seattle sound in the 90s?
On the Seattle sound in the 90s?
Yeah.
No, but you know what? There's a really good one. There's this movie called Hype, which was probably made in the mid-90s, came out in 95, 96. I don't know the name of the guy that made it, but it's really the best. It's a really, really good movie about the Pacific Northwest and the music scene in Seattle, like from the early 80s to the mid-90s. It really did capture what it was like to be there. Hype. It's a really good one. Okay, I'll answer one more. Yes, you right there in the middle.
You talked about how you've basically connected 40 years worth of bands with that one sound desk.
Yeah.
And you talked about how digital can be positive and you can use it in different ways like Trent does.
Sure.
But what comes for the next generation?
Well, I mean,
What is there left?
there's plenty left. I mean, you have to have hope, you know. You can't just I'm not gonna throw away my instruments because music is dead.
Connect themselves to Fleetwood Mac or...
Well, I mean, look, I still discover new bands that I think are the coolest fucking bands in the world. Like, someone will make me a mix CD, and I'll hear a band I've never heard and think, why have I never heard this band before? They're fucking amazing. And then I get really into them, and then I discover another band, and it still happens, you know? It's just, I think the thing is when you fall in love with music, it's usually because you fall in love with the artist or the person making the song. I read this little funny article the other day about meeting your heroes. Like, you should never meet your heroes, you know, because you've already fucking met them, you know, when you hear their music. Like, why would you ever need to meet Bob Dylan? Read his... No, I'm serious. Like, oh yeah, I guess to brag, but why would you ever need to meet anyone? If they're a real artist and they're singing from the heart, well then you've already fucking met them, you know? So I think it's important that the future of music is people. It has nothing to do with the technology. It really doesn't, if you think about it. I mean, there was music long before there was electricity, and there'll be music long after all of us are gone. It's not going to go away, but it's just, and you'll be able to find it. It'll be the fucking pub down the street. It'll be on the side stage. It'll be on the fucking Carly Redding stage, whatever. It's always going to be there. And so, I always tell this story because to me it makes the most sense. I gave my daughter the Beatles box set, like the vinyl box set. I came home with it. She's 6. I come home with this Beatles box set, and she already loves I brainwashed her. She already loves the Beatles. And I come home with this box set, and it's this fucking huge box, you know, weighs 50 pounds. And she looks at it, she's like, what is that? I said, Boo, this is the box set. Like, check it out. A vinyl. I open it up, and it's records, and she's holding them, like, you know, it's not a little thing, and it's not like an icon on your fucking iPod. It's like, she's like, oh my God, and she's opening it up, and so I take the record player, and I put it in her room, and I show her how to do it. I'm like, okay, take it out of the sleeve, and you put it on, You put the needle down, you be careful, there's 2 sides to it, and here's where it says the songs. And so I show her how to do it, and then I leave the room and I come back an hour later, and she's in there by herself, she's dancing to Get Back, and all the record covers are on the floor. And it's the exact same experience that we had when we were kids with record players. Like anyone for the last 50 fucking years, it's the exact same experience. So that experience had some sort of like emotional quality to it for her. It was like discovery, like, wow, you can hold it, like you can flip it over, and it wasn't just like, nope, I don't like that one, nope, I don't like that one, nope, I don't. It was like she was doing something, and she was responding to it exactly like we did when we were kids. Which to me was a good example of how, the world changes. Like, you cannot get in the way of progress and you can't give up hope. But we'll always be human beings. Like, we'll still be people. We're not robots, we're human beings. And so that same experience, as impractical as it may seem today, by today's standards, is an entirely human experience. And she has it the same today as it was being had 50 years ago, or whatever. So I think that'll happen forever. So it's just a matter of, it's a matter of connecting emotionally to music. And once music is like some one-dimensional thing that's thrown at you with fucking like cologne commercials and shit like that, and that's it, then you're in trouble. But as long as there's still people with instruments in your face singing about something entirely real that you connect to, well then, we're fine.
You know what I mean? You gotta have hope, Phil. Yeah, but what if we're not fine? That's what the girl was saying.
What's what?
What if we're not fine? We're all fine. All right, well, I think that's...
Just buy the new Foo Fighters record. $12.99, you know what I mean?
Do you need to get a plug-in for the film gratuitously?
No.
No? Okay, good.
I don't know.
Just checking.
Okay.
When's it out?
With the movie?
Yeah.
Well, right now it's...
Well, you do need to get the gratuitous form.
It's kind of already out, Phil.
Right, okay. But in physical form.
Physical form, I think it's in March. March 12th, I think, is when the DVD thing comes out. There
Any
you go.
gigs coming up?
What's that?
Any gigs coming up?
I got one tomorrow night. What's that? Oh, you guys need tickets, huh? It's Gus Brandt right there. Everybody just gives me
Right, well, I think all that's left for me to do is to ask you all to show your appreciation.
Thanks, guys. Thanks very much.